See, we plan ahead. That way we don't do anything right now.
I think about lots of things. Now, why don't we not stand here talking about them and get down to doing them?
To begin.
Clytus, I'm bored.
To begin.
What plaything can you offer me today?
How to start.
Welcome to the first syllable. Yesterday, I finally read through the Death, the script, again, and made all the physical changes I had done on paper. When I was attempting to remove 5 characters, by the time I even was doing that, I had already decided I had to keep Ringo and keep him separate from Ed. And then I was going to turn Susan into Mary into Mary Jane, get rid of where Mary Jane was. But that wasn't going to work because I got to a point where in the original script, Ed and Susan go on a walk. Ed gets killed. Oh, spoilers. And then Susan comes running back to the house. That's when we get to the break into Act 3 of a 4-act structure. And Mary Jane is wounded right at the beginning of that sort of same beat as we shift from Act 2 to Act 3. And Mary is supposed to mourn her, but I can't have Mary, instead of Susan, out on a walk with Susan, which means it's really Mary and Mary Jane when they have to be in a different place to get injured. So I had to it got weird because on paper I was scribbling notes about how Mary Jane would be wounded out in the woods instead of Ed. And though it's fatal, she'd be a fatal injury. She'd have just enough energy to come back to the house and get down into the basement with Mary, and it didn't work right. Because then how is Mary helping her brother get down into the basement? Get his wheelchair down into the basement. At the same time, she's trying to help Mary Jane down into the basement. When all of this is happening with a killer on her heels. So it got complicated. What else was I removing? I was combining Helen and Elsie. No, Helen and Katie. But then in certain scenes, I needed Helen in one place talking to Hank, when I also needed Elsie talking to Katie in a different room. That one got weird too, because I got to points where, as the cast is getting smaller and smaller toward the end of the script, because it's a slasher, certain characters weren't where they were supposed to be anymore. And as of now, while I was trying to remove 5 characters, I think I have only actually removed 1. Although I did move a few scenes around, change some dialogue. I have an idea for an extra scene I want to put in there, at least one, maybe a couple. I still would love, now that I've cleaned it up and figured out what I could do as far as characters, to go back through and change the timeline. Because currently it still goes by they arrive in the afternoon, by like midnight, everything's gone to hell. Which is fine. But the script's so long, I wish it had time for more. It's long because there's a lot of people. It's not long because there's a lot happening. And that's a problem. Because you don't want people wondering, why is this cast so big? Before they have a chance to wonder about the other stuff that's weird. And the way it is right now, I think it's got that problem where it's a little too much plot and not enough story. Not enough character beats. There's a few. Ed and Susan have a great little walk, and they need another scene. Ed and Marty, and also Ringo and Marty, have very nice little connecting scenes. There's a lot of arguing and back and forth stuff with Kitty and Polly and AJ and Alma. Oh, I did switch out that one. To get rid of the similar name, Katie, when I have a Kitty. I was deleting Vic anyway, so I turned Vic into Katie. So I guess I got rid of 2 characters. Vic and Will. Vic I don't miss. Vic is fine. She was just kind of extra. And she got merged with Elma and it worked out. Getting rid of Will removed a whole little subplot thing with Helen and Hank and Will were trying to have a threesome. And Will kind of chickened out. It was a comedic little moment right before a bunch of murders happen. But without Will, we lose that scene. And that's okay. There's still, because it's partly, an 80s slasher, as it were, there's still at least one nude scene, at least one sex scene, and many murders. Because now it is, 17 characters? 16 characters? and only 2 of them live. Spoilers. As far as we know, 2 of them live. A twist. So it's kind of weird that I was trying to make big changes and ended up only making minor changes, but now that I've made the minor changes, I think I can make some different big changes, like adding a new scene with Ed and Susan, probably adding a whole scene with AJ and Polly, and Mary and Mary Jane. While I like them, they don't do a lot. They spend most of their time sitting on the couch while other people are doing things to create the implication that they're in a scene with other people. I think they need something else so we can get a better idea of their relationship. Plus, there's little hints of dialogue toward the end of their thing where there is something else going on and it never comes up. And I've mentioned it when I talked about the characters, is that Mary either recently found out she's pregnant or recently got an abortion after finding out she was pregnant. Since it never comes up, I never had to be that clear about it. But then she's involved, basically, while she and Mary Jane were sort of broken up, maybe? This is part of what isn't specific because I never wrote it. Then Mary went and had a fling with a guy, got pregnant, and then in dealing with that, she and Mary Jane reconnected. There's hints of it in the dialogue, and I was going to add a very specific thing where Kitty proved that she was from the future by talking about how she knew Mary was pregnant. But that never happened, because the way the dialogue had worked out, they all just kind of believed her just because all this crazy shit was happening. They're like, whatever, more crazy shit, more crazy shit, who cares? So, that's the state of death, in parentheses, part 1. I think it just would be called death, but hey, if it did well. I want to write the scripts for part 2 and part 3 soon, because the 3 kind of fit together, and timeline-wise, in order to deal with 2 especially, part 2, I gotta know all of the victims from all of the years. If somehow you're new to this show, Death is it's as if we're jumping into a slasher series a few movies in. So there's already this history of multiple times this killer has come back and killed a bunch of people. And there's a whole discussion where the characters are looking at Wikipedia and trying to figure out when other people are going to die, because they have, through a strange psychic connection, they are connected to the people in a different year where the killer's there. And they have a little debate about whether or not they can try to warn them and change history, or whether or not that's even possible.
Doc, about the future.
No! Marty! We've already agreed that having information about the future can be extremely dangerous. Even if your intentions are good, it can backfire drastically. Whatever you've got to tell me, I'll find out through the natural course of time.
But in order for part 2 to work, where our survivors come back to the house the next time the killer's supposed to be around, along with a bunch of quote-unquote psychics, to try to connect to each of the years he's been there, to try to figure out how to stop him. Like, what are his weaknesses? What has hurt people? How have people hurt him in the past? Because we know there was a fire in 1977. We know in 1993, the FBI were there. A little echo of the beginning of Jason Goes to Hell. And also in part 2, we get to see the original massacre that started his string of murders, except by the end of that story, we also have a hint that there might have been an earlier murder that no one knows about. And so part 3 will be about trying to figure out the details of that. And so part 2 is a large cast, but not as unique, I hope. I don't know how large. I think it'd be a smaller cast than part 1, but there would be more characters here and there in appearances, because we'd get glimpses of different years that people got killed there. But mostly our cast would be the psychics in the present. Part 3 is more complicated and is like an investigation and a sort of psychic connection into the past. And so my little high concept time travel slasher film thing is designed as a trilogy. It's designed as give us the setup. This is murders that happen every 8 years. Was 7 years before, but that has changed. And this psychic connection between different years. Sequel comes, and now someone tries to exploit that psychic connection and use it to fight back. But, trilogy, we find out there was more going on all along.
If you find yourself dealing with an unexpected backstory and a preponderance of exposition, then the sequel rules do not apply, because you are not dealing with a sequel. You are dealing with the concluding chapter of a trilogy. That's right. It's a rarity in the horror field, but it does exist. And it is a force to be reckoned with. Because true trilogies are all about going back to the beginning and discovering something that wasn't true from the get-go. Godfather, Jedi, all revealed something that we thought was true that wasn't true.
And maybe there's a reason. There's this psychic hotspot around this place, and that people are able to connect between the different years because of more things happening. Benny's not just a Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers type who comes back after being defeated. There's more to him. But also, in Death, 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 no one defeats him. The most they do is slow him down. As Kitty points out, all you have to do is survive past a certain day and you should be fine. Except, because I had changed the dates, amusingly, one of the years, that date is already happened. It was the day before. And I'm like, oh, well, see how that goes. But that can also be changed too. They could have been arriving on a Thursday instead of a Friday. I love the ending of the first of the script I have, though, because I've already told you about it. Kitty has to drive away. She has slowed down Benny, but she cannot directly intervene and stop him from going after Marty, so she just hopes. She tells Marty to get to the basement. The problem is Marty is in that moment without his wheelchair. So when she gets into her car to drive away, Marty's crawling into the house. And so the last line is, "Good luck, kid," and then she drives away. Oof. Kitty is a morally problematic character. Because she had good reason to think bad things could happen, but she still brought her friends up to this house. Part of her hoped something would happen. Part of her thought nothing would happen because Wikipedia is bullshit. Wikipedia isn't bullshit, for the record. Wikipedia is a great place to start your research, because a lot of Wikipedia pages nowadays cite their sources at the bottom. They're all supposed to. Most of them, I'd say most of them do, but I don't know. There's a lot of pages, so I haven't seen most of them. Just don't quote the Wikipedia. Find the original. Even if it doesn't cite a source, take that paragraph you want, copy and paste it into Google and see what comes up. You'll probably find it's just copied from some other website. There's your advertisement for Wikipedia. I'd ask for money for that advertisement, but Wikipedia is a non-profit, so let them do what they do. I think they're a non-profit. I'm a non-profit. I.e., I ain't making any money. But you can support the show at patreon.com/lemmingdrops if you want. Also, I've been thinking a lot more about Chase 2 Rabbits and getting started on it sometime soon, but I wanted to get this sort of second draft of Death, Death, Death done first. And now that I'm a week into my summer schedule, I think I know how tired or not I am going to be getting up early. So now I can figure out what I can get done. Anyway, till next week, keep writing, keep reading, keep watching movies, whatever it is you do. Enjoy stories, tell stories. There's no tagline for this show, but that's almost it. What's the pump up the volume? Talk hard. This isn't that.
Cut. Perfect.
I should get coffee. Coffee would help me think. But I should write something first, then reward myself with coffee. Coffee and a muffin.
You're still here?
Okay, so I need to establish the themes.
It's over. Go home.
Maybe banana nut. That's a good muffin.
Go.